Hello, and welcome to my video series on gaining ELO. This is going to be extended over 9 videos teaching you the ins and outs of League of Legends and everything you'll need to know to improve. After the 9 instructional videos, I'll be making more with in-depth explanations of how each ELO bracket or tier, being between Bronze to Diamond, differ in relation to what the players in this skill level know in comparison to the information I'll be providing in these videos. In this video, we will be focusing on map awareness. Map awareness is one of the most basic concepts in League of Legends, but it doesn't make it any less important. It's also one of the few skills you can learn to better yourself at without having to be tactically or mechanically skilled. However, by learning about the map and movements of champions, it can increase both your tactical and mechanical skill. The topics we'll be going over for map awareness will include warding, more warding, and extra wards just in case. After which, we'll go into some ways to improve your ability to look at the map by training yourself to have triggers, things that cause you to look at the map. We'll also go over keeping track of your enemy and your own team. After all that, we'll be going into the measurements of the map of Summoner's Rift and seeing if we can estimate how long it'll take to get from point A to point B on the map. This is important when understanding windows of opportunity in roaming and being roamed on. So let's get started. First topic on the list, warding. Warding is incredibly important because it provides vision for your team. With vision, you can stay safer, as well as find people on the enemy team who aren't safe. You can take control of objectives, and can solely control the map. Controlling the map with wards is one of the most important aspects with League of Legends. So, for this, we're going to be going over warding for each lane. We'll be going over mid, we'll be going over top, we'll be going over bottom, after which we'll be looking at wards for both Dragon and Baron control. Later on in the instructional series, we'll be going over more in-depth wards on how to pressure the map. For this one, we're just going to be looking at the best spots for the early to mid game and controlling certain objectives. We're going to start out with mid lane. For mid lane, there's 4 spots that you have as a good option to ward. Now, you really only need 1 ward on each side, or perhaps 2 wards on one side. For these wards, the spots you'll be looking for at are Banana Brush and the backside Red Brush. No matter what side you're on, anything I'm about to say will apply. For playing more aggressively and trying to catch the enemy jungler out, or if you'll be trying to ward, you'll be going for warding the opposite side. So, if you're blue side, which is the bottom left side, you'll be wanting to ward the enemy Red Brush and the enemy Banana Brush. However, if you're being pushed in on, or your jungler is being invaded a lot, you'll want to ward your own Banana Brush and Red Side Brush. It's important to note that as a mid laner, having 2 wards out is optimal, and it's optimal to have 1 on each side. This is because it gives your lanes, or your side lanes, vision, as well as they'll only need to ward 1 spot. Because of this, you'll also feel safer in playing more aggressively, as will your side lanes. It will also allow your jungler more pressure by knowing and avoiding any disadvantageous engages with the enemy jungler. As a mid laner and also jungler, we can't forget about pink wards. You have 4 good options for pink wards. However, one of these spots, the enemy Red Side Brush, is the least optimal, as it's harder to defend. For these spots, they are rarely traveled through, and when they are, it's for a short period of time, often leading to the enemy overlooking them and granting you vision for insane amounts of time, sometimes upwards of 30 minutes. The reason you want to keep them on your side is because it takes 5 auto attacks for the enemy to destroy them. Within this time, you can often punish the enemy and take something afterwards, or simply save your wards and keep the vision. Buff wards. For jungle warding, you'll want to either ward the enemy buffs or your buffs, depending on if you're stronger or if the enemy jungler is stronger, respectively. Take note that each buff has a different bonus. For blue buff, if you have it, you can stay on the map longer because of the mana regeneration. If you have red buff, you'll have better potential for ganks. Note that this isn't 100% true for each jungler, but is a very simplified way to look at it. Within different instructional guides for specific champions, you can learn the exact reasons for the value of each buff based on the champions you're using. But for now, let's keep it to warding. For warding the enemy camps, blue is more dangerous to ward for blue side, the bottom left, and red is more dangerous to ward for the red side, and that'll be the top right team. This is because if the bottom lane responds to invades while you're trying to ward, it'll be a 4v2, meaning your mid laner and your jungler versus the enemy mid lane, the enemy jungler, and the enemy bottom lane, or vice versa. Because the enemy bottom lane never has a good way to approach and assist their team. Always try to prioritize the buff that makes you stronger and the enemy buff that makes them stronger. That means if you have an Anivia mid, you'll want to be making sure your blue is always safe before your red. If the enemy has an Anivia mid, you'll want to be making sure that you can take their blue buff before their red buff any chance you can get. Now, let's take a look at bottom lane warding. The first thing to note is that after 5 minutes, you'll always want to try and have dragon warded. This is because oftentimes junglers can sneak a dragon in, and it can lead to an early advantage. But if they get caught out trying, they can hand over a dragon and some free kills, because dragon does a lot of damage early game. The next ward you'll want to pay attention to is Tribush. If you, as a bottom lane, meaning the AD carry and support, can manage to maintain wards on both dragon and Tri, you'll be extremely safe. This is because if the enemy jungler comes to gank you, you can be aware and respond accordingly. This also helps your team know where the enemy jungler is. For the lane warding, this depends on if you're pushing up or being pushed in on. If you're pushing upward, they're bottom brush, and if they're pushing, you ward your side. Warding their side when you're playing aggressively ensures that if they try to retreat through the brush, you have vision. Warding on your side, if you're being pushed, ensures you'll see if the enemy jungler or mid laner tried to roam through the lane and tried to get a sneaky gank on you. It's also important to note for blue side teams specifically, which is the bottom left team, if the enemy jungler has a wall hopping ability, such as Aatrox, Jarvan, Lee Sin, or other junglers, you'll want to ward the river brush instead of closer to dragon, and communicate to your mid or jungler to ward dragon for you instead. This is because they can bypass your dragon ward and hop straight into the river brush from their tri brush, leaving you unaware, and it can cause some serious damage if they get the gank off. Now for top lane. For top lane, you're going to have 4 to 5 different warding spots. For the most important two, it'll be river brush or Baron, and the tri brush. Having 2 wards never hurts, but if your mid laner is warding properly, oftentimes you'll only need 1 to feel completely secure. Note that as a red side top laner, which is the top right team, similar to the blue side bottom, you'll want to focus on warding the river brush itself, rather than Baron. Again, this is because junglers with abilities to jump over walls can get a sneaky gank on you if you're not prepared. With your second ward, you can often ward the enemy or your own buff. Because top laners are tanky enough and have enough damage, they can solo enemy buffs fairly easily, leading to some extra advantages. So here's a good rule to follow. If you're stronger than your opponent in lane, ward the enemy buff. If you're even in lane, ward the enemy buff. However, if you aren't stronger and your jungler has been doing well, ward the enemy buff. If you and your jungler are both not so well off, ward your own buff. As you can see, most of the time, you'll be wanting to sneak a ward onto the enemy buff. This is because oftentimes these buffs go unwarded, and it's free vision and possible chances to gain advantages. Even if you can't directly contest in a fight for a buff, your jungler can simply walk by the wall and sneakily smite it and get away scot-free, leading to some advantages for no risk whatsoever. Next, we'll go over dragon warding. Dragon is an extremely important objective through the entire game, and warding correctly will ensure you have the best chances to secure it for your team. For warding, blue circles are for blue team and red circles are for red team for this demonstration. Yellow will be for contested wards. So, for blue, you'll want to ward the enemy banana brush so you can see enemies coming from their mid lane, the enemy blue ramp to see if the enemy jungler or bottom lane is coming, and the river brush bottom to see if the enemy bottom lane is rotating. Of course, you'll always want to ward on dragon. If you have a ward on dragon, you can skip out on the blue ramp ward most of the time unless you need it for vision for an upcoming fight. For red side, you'll want to ward the enemy wraith ramp and the enemy tri brush. Wraith ramp to see enemies coming from mid and tri to see if the bottom's rotating. You'll also want to ward directly behind the dragon pit to make sure the enemy isn't going to try for a sneaky steal. Note that if you're blue side and you have reason to believe the enemy jungler is still on your red side jungle, which means the bottom left, you can also ward behind the dragon pit as well to ensure that you'll secure it. Now for Baron warding. For Baron warding, you'll notice there's a lot more contested ward spots. This is because when doing Baron, you want to spare no expense to ensure you get the buff. The difference between getting Baron and losing it can mean the game. So let's go over contested wards first. For contested wards in the river, you'll want them to all be pink wards. Yes, pink wards. Have 2 to 3 of your teammates coordinate which they'll place so you can make sure the enemy team doesn't have vision. For Baron, you'll also want to ward the mid lane bush on the top side. That's because teams can also rotate as 5 from there, as they'll be grouped during this point of the game, which is about 25 plus minutes. This is also a decent spot for warding dragon, although you'll be warding on the mid lane bottom side during later in the game. For blue side specifically, you'll want to ward the enemy wraith ramp and the enemy tri bush as well as behind the Baron pit. This is again to see where the rotations are going to be coming from. For red side, you'll want to ward the enemy banana brush and the enemy blue buff ramp to see where the rotations are coming from. Because most teams' rotations on blue side won't come through the top side river, you can skip out on warding this team on the red side. Lastly, during the late game, you'll want to be also warding the mid lane, actually in the lane, and these are all contested ward spots as well for both red and blue team. You'll want to ward dead center in the middle of the map, and also near the tier 2 towers for both teams. This is because the middle of the map is the most important to control. If you control the middle of the map, you have the quickest route to any other point on the map. So make sure you're warding these spots. These are also helpful to be pink wards, because then you know if the enemy team can see you rotating through mid. The next topic we'll be going over is training yourself to look at the map. There's 2 different things I like to do. Now, looking at the map goes hand in hand with warding. If you're warding, but you're not looking at the map, then there's really no point in warding. So, not only does looking at the map ensure that you can see where the enemy is, but it'll also make you aware for when you know where your own team is, and when they're coming in for a gank or to assist in holding your tower. My first tip is using a tone that beeps every 5 to 10 seconds. That's not too distracting, but it's noticeable. This noise will be your trigger. Every time this noise beeps, you'll remember that you should look at the map, and you will. After a few hours of playing with this tone, you can turn it off, and you'll still have that instinct to continue looking at the map every 5 to 10 seconds. I'll provide a link in the description for where you can find a tone such as this. For my second tip, train to look at the map after every last hit or whenever you're out of range of the enemy. So for after every last hit, you take a look at the map. And this will help because even though you're last hitting, you've already ensured that you've sent out your auto attack and you can't change that. So you have a spare second to look at the map. Also, if you're looking at the map whenever you're always out of range of the enemy, you'll always know where they are. Now, you don't have to be staring at it, but you can use your peripheral vision to look at the map or around that area on your screen while also seeing where your character is and being able to move. Because there's no danger around you and you're not last hitting at this moment, your peripheral vision is enough to control your character and get you from where you are to where you'll be going. Next on our list, and last for map awareness video, is going to be travel times. We're going to be taking a look at how long it'll take people to travel from mid to the other lanes, from top to mid lane, and from bottom to mid lane. Notice how it's always going to involve mid lane. This is because most of the time top's not going to roam to bottom, and bottom's not going to roam to top. So you can generally use the time it takes to get from top to mid, and then the times I show to get from mid to bottom to calculate that. Now we're going to be going over both sides, so red and purple travel times, and all travel times are going to be using rank 2 boots, except for the supports. The support travel times are going to be using rank 1 boots. This is because oftentimes supports will stall out buying their rank 2 boots for as long as possible because it's not as important for them. Alright, so let's start with the blue team's mid lane. So blue team is the bottom left. Now, the colors going towards top lane are going to represent the times. So to travel along the light blue line from mid is going to take 17 seconds. To travel along the blue line and break off towards the red path is going to take 18 seconds. Note that the red path stops in Tribush, and from here you're going to make the decision to go all the way behind or through the river. For the blue line that breaks off and goes black, it's going to take 21 seconds. And to follow the path that leads to the green line, which is coming up behind your top laner's tower, is going to take about 20 seconds. As for roaming bottom, as the blue team mid laner, going from straight down the river is going to take about 17 seconds. Going round the enemy blue buff is going to take about 20 seconds. Going around the enemy blue buff to their Tribrush is going to take 21 seconds. And going straight down to your own Tribrush is going to take about 18 seconds. Now, let's go over red team's mid laner and the time it takes for them to roam. Again, we're going to start by looking at the times going towards the top lane. To go directly to your own Tribrush, it's going to take about 18 seconds. To go through your Wraith ramp up towards the river, it's going to take 17. And going round the enemy blue buff to river is going to take 21 seconds. And going round the enemy blue buff to their Tribrush, top laner, is going to take about 20 seconds. As for red team's mid laner roaming towards bottom lane, going from your banana brush straight down the river is going to take about 17 seconds. Going around your own blue buff towards your Tribrush and coming behind your team's tower is going to take about 20 seconds. Running behind blue buff to river is going to fetch you about 21 seconds. And running from your banana brush behind the enemy red brush is going to take about 18 seconds. Now that we've done mid laners, let's go to top laners. Again, starting from the blue side. For the blue top laner, this is going to be starting from where the light blue line starts on the screen. To run straight down the river, it's going to take about 19 seconds. Now to run through the enemy jungle behind red, it's going to take about 21 seconds. As for the red top laner, this is going to be starting where the black line starts. Running straight down river or behind the banana brush to mid lane, it's going to take about 20 seconds for both, give or take maybe 1 second. And to run through the enemy jungle behind their blue buff, it's going to take 24 seconds, maybe 25. Last but not least, the supports. Now, sometimes supports will roam, and like I said before, most of the time they have rank 1 boots. So for this demonstration, the times are going to be based on rank 1 boots. So again, starting from the blue team, which is going to be the red line. Roaming up towards the mid lane through the tri-brush and up through the river, it's going to take about 20 seconds. For the red team support, going through river and your tri-brush, so the enemy tri-brush, and up behind the wraiths is going to take again about 20 seconds. Please note that these times are strictly for running only at about 375 movement speed, which is rank 2-ish boots or rank 1 boots for the supports. Also note that because it's running times, someone like Gragas or Fizz roaming are going to cut off a few seconds from them, and you're just going to have to learn to account for the difference between certain champions. Alright, that does it for my map awareness video. Thanks for watching, and have fun.